In a small village, surrounded by majestic mountains and verdant fields, life flowed peacefully. It was a place where people knew each other by name, and the young dreamed of the future, while the elders shared wisdom accumulated over generations. However, a cloud of uncertainty hung over the community. What happened after death? Conversations about the afterlife became increasingly frequent, and many wondered if there was truly a place in heaven reserved for them. Religious beliefs varied, but the hope of an eternal destiny united them all. Among the villagers was Marta, a woman with a generous heart and unwavering faith. From a young age, she had dedicated her life to helping those in need and spreading love around her. However, even with her good deeds, Marta found herself consumed by doubts. The weight of uncertainty accompanied her in her silent prayers, and she often wondered if what she was doing was enough to secure a place in heaven. Her search for answers led her to hear stories of people who claimed to have visions of a celestial world, and this only increased her curiosity and anxiety. Would these truly be the keys to understanding her destiny? Meanwhile, in the same village, there was a group of young people who felt lost. Among them was Lucas, a dreamer who had always had a romantic view of life, but who struggled with his own weaknesses and fears. He felt distant from God and believed that his flaws made him undesirable anywhere, especially in heaven. Lucas's friends tried to cheer him up, but insecurity and despair became persistent shadows in his mind. The desire to find signs that they could be accepted into an eternal kingdom grew, driving them to a relentless search for answers. In that setting, the atmosphere was charged with expectation. The conversations in the village square became more intense, and people gathered in small groups to share their experiences and doubts. Some spoke about the importance of good deeds, while others argued that faith was the only path to salvation. The central dilemma unfolded in the minds and hearts of everyone. What did it truly mean to be worthy of heaven? Marta wondered if her actions were enough, while Lucas sought confirmation that his flaws would not keep him from divine love. The climate of anticipation grew as an old wise man, known for his stories and teachings, decided to share his vision of the signs that would indicate that someone was on the right path to heaven. He promised to reveal 3 signs that could surprise everyone. The crowd gathered, eager to hear his words, and the hope that they could find clarity amidst the confusion was in the air. The old man knew that his revelations could change the lives of many, especially Marta and Lucas, who, in their personal journeys, were desperately seeking a greater meaning. Thus, in the heart of the village, where doubts and hope intertwined, a new story was about to be told, and each of those present, with their uncertainties and fears, awaited anxiously for the wisdom that could finally illuminate their paths and show that perhaps they were already closer to heaven than they imagined. Marta woke up that morning with a feeling of restlessness. The sun had barely risen behind the mountains, but the soft light was already coming through the window of her small room, illuminating the walls decorated with pictures of her childhood and special moments with the villagers. As she made coffee, she thought about how her life had been dedicated to serving others, but the uncertainty about what awaited her after death pursued her like a relentless shadow. What if all this isn't enough? She questioned herself while stirring the spoon in the mug. What if I'm just deceiving myself? Outside, the fresh morning air brought the distant sound of laughter and lively conversations in the central square. Marta felt a call to join the group, but hesitated. What could she say to them? How could she share her anguish without appearing weak? The weight of doubt seemed harder to bear than any physical burden. With a deep sigh, she decided she needed to face it. She dressed quickly and went out. In the square, Lucas was sitting on a bench, staring into space. His friends, Anna and Tiago, tried to cheer him up, but he only replied with forced smiles. Marta approached, noticing the look of dejection on his face. "Hi, Lucas. "Is everything okay?" she asked, trying to hide the concern in her voice. "Hi, Marta," he replied without much energy. "Just thinking about life. You know how it is." Anna, sensing the tension, intervened. "Lucas, you need to stop worrying so much. No one here is perfect, and that doesn't mean we can't be loved." "But what if I'm not enough?" Lucas said, his voice almost a whisper. "What if all my flaws keep me away from God? Sometimes I feel like I'm lost." Marta, feeling the connection between their doubts, decided to open her heart. "I feel that way too, Lucas. I do everything I can to help others, but sometimes I wonder if it's enough. What if all this isn't worth it?" Lucas's eyes widened. "You too. I thought you had everything under control." "Control isn't the same as believing," Marta replied with a sad smile. "Doubt is a part of our journey, isn't it?" Tiago, who had listened in silence, decided to contribute. "Maybe the old wise man has something to tell us. He always has stories that make us think. Should we listen to him tonight in the square? Maybe he can help us understand all this." The idea of gathering again that night brought some relief to Marta's heart. "Yes, I would like to go," she said, more to herself than to the others. "Maybe we can find some answers." As the day progressed, the routine in the village continued. Marta dedicated herself to helping a family who had lost everything in a fire. While she organized donations and prepared meals, the expressions of gratitude on people's faces made her feel a little lighter. But doubts still lingered in her mind. "I'm doing this for love," she thought. "But what if it's not enough?" Lucas, on the other hand, sought distraction in his work in the fields. He was helping a local farmer plant seeds, but his mind couldn't focus. For every seed he placed in the soil, a new doubt arose in his mind. What if I plant the wrong seeds? What if nothing grows? After a tiring day, night finally arrived. The square was lit by lanterns that swayed gently in the breeze. The old wise man, with his long white beard and piercing gaze, prepared to share his stories. Marta and Lucas sat together, side by side, and felt the anticipation in the air. The wise man began to speak about the signs that guide us towards heaven. His tone was calm and engaging. "The first sign," he said, "is the ability to love unconditionally. When you love without expecting anything in return, you are approaching the essence of what it means to be truly human." Marta felt a warmth in her chest. She had dedicated her life to helping others, but now she saw it in a new light. "Does this mean I'm on the right track?" she thought, as she looked at Lucas, who was frowning, reflecting on the words. The wise man continued, "The second sign is the ability to forgive, both yourself and others. Forgiveness is a powerful force that frees us from the chains of the past." Lucas swallowed hard. "Forgive myself. Will I be able to?" he reflected. He began to realize that his flaws didn't have to be a barrier, but perhaps a lesson. And so, as the wise man's words resonated through the square, Marta and Lucas began to understand that the search for answers was a shared journey. They were both more connected than they imagined, and the hope of finding peace amidst uncertainty began to germinate. The night was just beginning, and the path ahead was still long. But perhaps, just perhaps, they were closer to heaven than they had ever thought. As the night progressed and the wise man's stories unfolded, Marta felt a transformation within herself. She had always believed that her actions were enough, but now, with his words echoing in her mind, she questioned whether the love she offered truly had the power to heal. "What if I'm not doing enough?" she thought, as her gaze fixed on Lucas, who was visibly agitated beside her. Lucas, in turn, fought against an internal storm. The wise man's words seemed to resonate in every corner of his mind, but doubt still consumed him. "How can I forgive myself if I can't accept who I am?" he reflected, feeling a knot in his stomach. The pressure of his uncertainties increased, and he couldn't prevent his flaws from surrounding him like shadows. The mood in the square began to change. The cheerful tone of the conversations gave way to nervous murmurs. A group of young people, known for their mischief, began to approach with boisterous laughter. Marta, who was so absorbed in her own worries, didn't notice the growing tension until one of them, a boy named Pedro, began to mock Lucas. "Look, there's sad Lucas again, lamenting his weaknesses. When will he stop being so dramatic?" Marta's heart skipped a beat. Why is he doing this, she thought, as the group of friends had fun at Lucas's expense. Their laughter echoed through the square, and the feeling of security she had felt moments before vanished. She looked at Lucas, who was visibly shrinking, and a wave of empathy washed over her. "I need to do something," she decided, feeling a spark of courage. "Hey, Pedro!" she called out, her voice firmer than she felt. "That's not funny! Lucas is going through a tough time, and you don't need to attack him like that." Pedro, surprised by the intervention, looked away, but soon a sarcastic smile formed on his face. "Ah, good old Marta, who always defends the losers. Don't worry, Lucas. I bet you'll get over it. Someday." The tension in the square increased, and Marta realized that the situation was escalating. The laughter of others turned into whispers, and Lucas, who was already in a vulnerable place, seemed even more shaken. Marta felt the pressure on her shoulders. "What if I can't protect him?" she thought, distressed. Within herself, she also fought against the fear of not being enough. What if, by trying to help, I just make things worse? The idea that her actions could have negative consequences paralyzed her. However, a new determination began to emerge. "I can't stand by while someone I care about is attacked." Lucas, in turn, felt each of Pedro's words like a blade. "I'm not a loser," he thought, but the doubt that had haunted him for weeks now took shape. What if I'm really not enough for anything? For my friends, for those I love, even for God? The weight of expectations and insecurities grew with each passing moment. The wise man, noticing the tension in the square, interrupted his narrative and looked at the young people. Sometimes the greatest challenge isn't finding answers, but how we deal with the questions and judgments we receive from others. What matters is not what others think, but how you see yourself. Marta felt a chill in her stomach. The wise man's words hit her hard. How do I see myself? Do I really value myself, or am I just seeking approval? The idea that her actions could be motivated by a need for validation made her reflect on her own journey. What if I'm just trying to be enough for others, without considering what I really want or need? Lucas, amidst the emotional turmoil, lifted his head as he heard the wise man. "Maybe I've let myself be influenced too much by other people's opinions," he thought. "But what do I do now? How can I forgive myself if I can't accept myself?" The internal struggle was intensifying, and he felt like he was on the edge of an emotional precipice. The group of young people began to disperse, but Marta felt that the battle was not over. "We need to come together and confront this," she thought, looking at Lucas, who had a distant look. "We can't let our doubts divide us further." As the square began to empty, the connection between Marta and Lucas strengthened. They were both struggling with their uncertainties, but now they shared the understanding that vulnerability was not weakness, but an essential part of being human. The tension that had settled in the square was perhaps the first step for them to unite, facing together the internal storms that haunted them. The path ahead still seemed foggy, but for the first time there was a spark of hope illuminating their souls. Marta felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Lucas's distant look tormented her. "He needs me now more than ever," she thought, as the group of young people dispersed, their laughter still reverberating in her mind. The indignation she felt for Pedro and his friends mingled with a paralyzing fear that her words wouldn't be enough to help Lucas get back up. The idea of failing frightened her, but the urgency of the situation drove her to act. "I'll be by his side," she decided, feelings of compassion and determination intertwining in her heart. "I can't let him face this alone." She approached Lucas, who was still looking at the ground, as if the weight of the world was on his back. "Lucas," she said softly, trying to break through the barrier that isolated him. "I'm here. No matter what others say, you are much more than your insecurities." Lucas looked up, and for a moment, the shadows that surrounded him seemed to hesitate. Marta's words penetrated his mind like a ray of light, but confusion still consumed him. "What if I'm not able to break free from this?" he questioned himself, fighting the storm that was brewing within him. The wise man had spoken about the importance of seeing oneself in a positive light, but how could he do that when his flaws were so evident? The square was now almost empty, and the serenity of the night contrasted with the agitation of his thoughts. Marta felt that the atmosphere around her was changing. The silence, initially oppressive, began to transform into a space conducive to the emergence of emotions. "Maybe this is the moment we need to confront it," she thought, feeling a growing determination. "If I don't do it now, when will I?" "I'm not a loser," Lucas muttered, his voice broken but firm. Hearing his words, Marta felt a thread of hope intertwining with her determination. "He's starting to get up," she thought, but the fear that any wrong move could undo that progress left her uneasy. "You're not alone, Lucas," she said, her voice stronger now. "We all face our demons. What matters is how we get up after being knocked down." Hearing this, Lucas began to realize that perhaps there was a way out of the darkness that surrounded him. "But how can I get up when I'm so tired of fighting?" he wondered. It was as if his previous efforts had left him powerless to continue. From the other side of the square, the wise man watched the scene with attention. He knew that the emotional climax was about to unfold, and that the decisions Marta and Lucas made now would be crucial. He remembered times when he had also faced doubts and uncertainties, and how, instead of letting himself be consumed, he had found strength in vulnerability. "Let's support each other," Marta continued, looking into Lucas's eyes with a sincerity that touched him. "Let's face this together. You don't need to have all the answers now. What matters is that you're here, fighting." It was a moment of clarity for Lucas. He realized that although his doubts were intense, Marta's presence was a reminder that he was not alone in this battle. As the tension built, the decision of both became clear. Marta decided that she wouldn't be defeated by Pedro's words or the pressure of expectations. She couldn't control what others thought, but she could choose how to react. Lucas, in turn, began to see his pain from a new perspective. He didn't need to define himself by his flaws, but by the courage to face his fears. The atmosphere in the square seemed to intensify, as if the air was charged with electricity. Marta and Lucas were on the verge of a revelation, and the energy between them pulsed with the possibility of change. "Now is the time," thought Marta, feeling a surge of courage. "Let's get up and strengthen ourselves, even if it means facing pain and uncertainty." Lucas, infected by Marta's determination, decided he would no longer hide behind his insecurities. He turned to her, his gaze now firmer. "Yes, let's do this together," he said, his voice charged with a new resolution. They both knew that the path ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in a long time, there was a glimpse of hope, a spark of light that promised to illuminate the darkness that surrounded them. And with that decision, the square, now almost empty, seemed to witness the birth of a new journey. Marta's heart raced as she watched Lucas, the determination in his eyes growing with each passing second. It was as if the environment around them became a battlefield where words and emotions were the most powerful weapons. She knew she needed to be the anchor that would hold him while he fought his own internal storms. Lucas took a deep breath, the pressure in his chest almost unbearable. "How can I be strong now?" he thought, as memories of his past failures haunted him. He felt the anticipation pulsing in the air, the need to break free from that weight, but doubt always seemed to be one step ahead of him. With a colossal effort, he looked at Marta, seeking that light that seemed to come from her. "What if I fail again? What if this is all in vain?" The words formed like shadows in his mind, challenging his new resolution. "It's not about not failing, Lucas," Marta said, with a firmness that surprised even herself. "We all fail. What matters is how we get up. Let's show them we're stronger together." The passion in her voice resonated like a drum, calling Lucas to get up, to not be defeated by the voices of the past. He felt adrenaline coursing through his body, an unknown energy beginning to take over him. "Yes, I can do this," he thought, Marta's voice echoing in his mind like a mantra. "I'm not just a loser. I'm more than that." The idea of breaking free from the invisible chains that bound him filled him with renewed courage. Marta took a step forward, her presence solid and encouraging. "Let's do this together," she said, her hand reaching out to Lucas, intertwining their fingers. The warmth of the touch made her feel that a new connection was forming, a silent pact of mutual support. They could face the storm, one facing the other with the strength of their convictions as a shield. The square now seemed to vibrate with the energy of their resolutions. Lucas looked around, remembering the V, the echoes of Pedro and the other boys' voices, their laughter now sounding like distant echoes, faded away. "Enough," he thought, his determination solidifying. "I won't let them define me anymore." He turned, facing the darkness that surrounded him, challenging the voices that had always belittled him. "I am stronger than this." Marta, standing beside him, felt the shift. She recognized that the fear that had once dominated Lucas was being replaced by a spark of courage. "Let's go," she whispered, and together they started walking towards the center of the square, as if marching towards the most important confrontation of their lives. As they reached the center, the weight of expectation enveloped them. The echoes of the night were more intense, and the atmosphere, thick with tension, seemed to anticipate what was to come. "Pedro!" Lucas shouted, calling out to the one responsible for his insecurities. The group, who had been laughing before, turned, and their eyes began to focus on them. Pedro's expression transformed, the confidence he had been displaying vanishing before Lucas's determination. "You're nothing but a loser, Lucas," Pedro blurted out, but Lucas's voice rose above his, stronger than any insult. "I'm not who you say I am anymore. I'm more than your words. I have value, and you won't diminish me anymore." The intensity of Lucas's declaration caused the group to hesitate, the tension palpable between them. Marta looked at Lucas, her heart pounding with pride. He was facing his greatest fear, and she felt that the energy around them had changed. The group, which had seemed so united in their hostility before, started to waver. The expressions on Pedro and his friends' faces were shifting, uncertainties emerging on their faces. "This is just talk, Lucas. You know you can't change who you are." Pedro tried to belittle him, but his voice trembled, and Lucas realized that Marta's words were coming true. He wasn't alone. He had someone who believed in him, and that gave him a strength he never knew he possessed. "I am who I choose to be," Lucas declared, each word carrying a new power. "And I choose to no longer be the victim of your words. You have no power over me." The silence that followed was deafening. Marta squeezed Lucas's hand tighter, and he felt the energy of her support pulsing through him. As their eyes locked, Lucas realized that the confrontation wasn't just a battle against Pedro, but an internal struggle. He was breaking free from the chains that had kept him bound, And this liberation was the true triumph. "I am ready to stand up," he thought, as a new kind of determination filled his being. The square, once a battlefield, was now becoming a symbol of renewal. Lucas and Marta together were writing a new chapter in their lives. The moonlight illuminated their faces, reflecting the transition from a cycle of pain to one of hope. And, at that moment, as the echoes of the past began to fade, they both knew that the true victory was the courage to stand up and confront their truths.